Agencies will submit new data and analysis to the Office of Management and Budget to comply with guidance from OMB. The guidance is part of agency implementation of the Evidence Act. Nick Hart is president of the Data Foundation. Nick, thanks very much for coming on. OMB viewers will probably scold me because they don't like the idea that this is compliance. In this guidance, Shalonda Young writes, agencies should not simply produce the required documents and then turn their attention elsewhere. What would you like to see agencies do to really dig into the spirit of the Evidence Act and not just the letter of it?
Well, Francis, this is a really important moment for implementing the Evidence Act and taking this new charge of government seriously. So this is the first guidance on the Evidence Act from the Biden administration, and they've made this really strong commitment to evidence-based policymaking. This memo is not just about saying that, it's about providing a roadmap of how to do it. So this says we're going to move beyond performance measurement and tracking basic metrics to actually studying how programs work and what impacts they achieve and in what places, where and why. So the expectations from the administration are incredibly clear here. And they're saying evaluation matters. It's a basic function of government, just like managing your budget. So this is really important for implementing the Evidence Act. It's a critical role of the new evaluation officers to take these strategies to heart. And it's the reason the American Evaluation Association also just came out and said, this is one of the most critical moments for evaluation that we've seen in government. Two really key things in the guidance. One, OMB is saying this doesn't just apply to some agencies. This is the expectation of the whole of government. And that's a really important statement. And then secondly, and to OMB's credit, they're giving us increased coherence about how we can implement all of these different aspects of improving government in one big strategy.
There are two vehicles here, it seems to me, that OMB expects agencies to put together. One is the learning agenda, and the other is an annual evaluation plan. Am I reading the framework of this correctly, Nick?
That's exactly right. They're both requirements of the Foundations for Evidence-Based Policymaking Act. So the learning agenda is like a strategic plan specifically for research and evaluation. And it was also a critical aspect of the Evidence Act because it connects the research community, those producing evidence, to the decision-making needs of policymakers. So if we can be honest about the big questions that we have in our society, the things that we don't know answers to today, document those, we can also identify the evidence we have and the evidence that we need to ensure that we're collecting the right kinds of data and then actually studying the right things to improve the services and policies for the American people.
I want to go back to that idea of the spirit versus the letter of the act. What would you like to see agencies do with those learning agendas and those annual evaluation plans so that they actually get to more evidence-based policymaking rather than just the compliance aspect of this that people are concerned agencies will take this as?
Yeah, I mean, if we've only achieved a check the box exercise here and folks are producing these, publishing them, but then not using the learning agendas or the evaluation plans, we haven't changed the culture of government. And that's really what the Evidence Act was about, trying to change this culture over time. That's what the signaling in the memo from OMB is also suggesting. Senior leaders have to take a really key role in this and not just identifying the core issues that they want to build evidence on, but actually using that evidence in practice. And that's one of the great aspects of the learning agenda process. To not make this a compliance exercise, it also requires us to be honest and transparent. Maybe even engaging the American people and stakeholder communities in ways that we haven't historically done. So there's some interesting references in the memo, for example, about inclusive stakeholder engagement processes that may not mean just publishing something in the Federal Register and hoping that you get good responses, but actively reaching out in a participatory way so that beneficiaries of programs, researchers, those in the evidence building community can actually engage on these topics in a really coherent way. And one piece that I thought was really intriguing, OMB said that one of the stakeholders is Congress, which is not a statement that we tend to hear from the executive branch in this way.
What are the potential obstacles or potential mistakes that agencies could make as they move forward on these that you would like to see them avoid, Nick?
Well, there's always a risk that we get so bogged down in the process that we lose sight of the fact that the process is a means to an ends. And this was also actually acknowledged in the memo, that the ends is actually improving outcomes, making our programs operate better. The processes that are outlined here are just a way to get there. So every agency is going to have a slightly different process, slightly different configuration of what they put in their learning agendas and their evaluation plans and how they organize the activities. And in many respects, every agency has to figure some of that out for themselves. They know their policies, they know their programs, they know their communities the best. But at the end of the day, the common strategy for having a learning agenda and having an evaluation plan, and then being responsive to your respective communities is the goal that we're really working towards.
We have about 30 seconds left, Nick. In a few weeks, your former colleague on the Commission on Evidence-Based Policymaking, Robert Shea, will be on to talk about similar issues. Do I have to give him credit for any of these ideas? Because when I do that, he's just incorrigible.
Well, all of this work started with the U.S. Commission on Evidence-Based Policymaking, and Robert was a member. So the fact that we have evaluation officers or an Evidence Act is really a credit to that commission.
Nick, thanks very much for coming on. It's always great to have you here.
Thanks, Francis.